Investment Promotion Commission on the 8th of November 2016. You mentioned I was the 7th Executive Secretary? Okay. I didn't know this at the time, of course. But in the 3 years before I joined NIPC, there had been 5 Executive Secretaries, 3 substantive and 2 acting. So clearly from a leadership perspective, the organization had been through a number of changes. Pioneer Status Incentive, which was the major revenue earner for NIPC, had been on an administrative suspension since 2015 on account of allegations of abuse of the process. So from a financial perspective, it affected NIPC's IGR in that year. And I believe 296 million was generated as IGR in the year 2016. NIPC's style of investment promotion at the time related largely to organizing business and investment forums. It's a fairly reactive style of investment promotion, but that's what the Commission had done a lot of. That and the issuance of pioneer status were the 2 things that NIPC was largely known for. I didn't know when I joined NIPC, but I later found that it had had a patchy history of industrial relations. So from about 2014, both the supervising ministry, the Ministry of Labor, and the presidency had gotten involved at various times in addressing industrial disputes in NIPC. And the highlight of welfare at the time was a 200 million naira staff housing loan scheme that had been approved but was unfunded, because the funds for its establishment had not been set aside. From a financial perspective, from a record-keeping perspective, I mean, the quality and the depth of the records that I got at the time were very slim. But I came to NIPC literally off a pilgrimage. When you're on a pilgrimage, you're in a particularly altruistic frame of mind. So I came to NIPC believing that it was possible to do many things. And in my first engagement with staff, one of the first things I said was that I was going to do my best to work with the people. Of course, like many people who come from the private sector, I'd heard stories about the reality of the public sector. But I believed that where there are bad people, there are also good people. Where there are good people, there are also bad people. And I went through a series of methods to find the right kind of people in NIPC who were interested in doing the work. I am particularly proud of the fact that I didn't come to NIPC with any aides, with any assistants, that I worked with the people that I met. Rolling forward 5 years, I would say that we've made, material achievements in that period. I'm particularly proud. It's one of my proudest achievements. The fact that all of the work that has been done over that period was done with the same people that I met. A clear demonstration of the capacity latent but possible in the public sector. It's difficult to come into a position as anything but yourself, as anything but your full self. So I came to NIPC as a 23-year investment banker. And I don't think there's any aspect of my dealings with NIPC staff that I did not bring that to bear. Of course, there are many things I had to learn, in the course of working in NIPC. I'm not a politician. Sometimes it sounds like that's not a nice thing to say that you're not a politician when you're a political appointee. But it's no different from my saying I'm not a man. It doesn't say anything about the male gender. It just says that I'm not one. So one of the things I had to learn, when you hold a position that has some political sensitivity and you're a technocrat, about how to get the work done despite the backdrop of the conditions under which you work. but I worked as a technocrat in a politically sensitive environment. So investment banking is a specialized kind of banking. The quality of the skills, the kind of people, the quality of reporting, the quality of thinking, and the like, and the intellectual rigor that goes with investment banking are very different from your regular banking. I brought all of that to bear in the work that I did. So where I thought that staff were capable, I pushed them. Many times I was pushing people beyond the limits that they thought themselves, they were capable of. But I learned from banking, and in the work that I did as a banker, I worked with a lot of people fresh out of university, where you teach them the skills they need. What you look for is not somebody who has the skills you need. If you find somebody who has the skills you need, that's great. But if you find somebody who has the aptitude and the right attitude and the right values, then you work with that person to shape the person. It was pretty much the same way that I was groomed in banking as well. Anyway, so I worked with NIPC staff. If somebody demonstrated capacity and interest, and I thought they had capacity, I would push that person towards what I thought they could do. I wasn't aspiring to a public sector standard. I was aspiring to a standard, that is acceptable anywhere in the world, not a Nigerian standard, not a public sector standard, but I was looking through the eye of an investment banker. So the quality of rigor, the quality of detail, the quality of diligence that I pushed the team through. And I wasn't preaching, I wasn't giving them work and relaxing myself. We did the work together. I'm really, really, really impressed that a good number of people took on the challenge and embraced it. My family tell me that they're amazed that I can send emails, and I can test it any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I can send an email on Saturday evening at 10 p.m. And for many people in NIPC, before the middle of Sunday the following day, I would have got a response to it. So there were people who, rose to that challenge. But I looked at the NIPC Act and the objects that it gave to NIPC. I thought beyond the realm of business and investment forums. It's an important part of NIPC's work, but the NIPC's mandate is much bigger than that. And in the context of the reality of the competition for capital, in the context of the reality or the intense competition for capital, I thought a proactive, focused approach to investment promotion was necessary. I believe very much, it's useful to have people who are strong leading institutions, but it is even more important to have strong institutions. So even though it was the more difficult way to do it, it would have been easier for me to get a few consultants who already had the skills and the capacity and work with them to achieve results. But those results would not be as lasting. So it was important to me to work with NIPC staff to infuse them with those skills. The cost of working for government, in my view, is so high that if you can leverage your learning in government after you leave government, I think it is good to acquire those skills so they can work as consultants, after they leave government. So I pushed them to work like investment bankers. I tried to push to think like bankers, to work from a perspective not of conjecture or assumption, but based on facts. So I forced people to gather data, I forced analysis, I forced presentation for clarity. If you write a 40-page document that you can write in 4, nobody's going to read the 40-page one because they'll see through it. If the 4 pages is interesting, if it is concise, it is more likely to get attention. But this took a lot of work, literally teaching people new skills. They already had the foundation, but I thought it was important to build that institutional base for NIPC. Now, a lot of the stuff that we've done is just putting in place the building blocks that are required for my successors to build on. But I focused a lot of attention on institution building, which is a key part of the kind of organizations that I had worked for, in the private sector. So I brought all of me that I faced in NIPC and how, in the typical style for many who have come to the public sector from the private sector like me, the typical style of what they've experienced is a public, giving wide publicity to the challenges that they face. That will discourage many people from, joining the public sector. The reality, though, is that Nigeria needs more people from the private sector working in the public sector so they understand where the shoe pinches. We also need more people from the public sector having private sector experience so they understand what is possible. I believe, although my experience will suggest to many that the difficulty of working in the public sector is still real and discourage many, the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you 2 days to the end of my tenure is also a clear demonstration of the fact that it may be difficult, but it is possible. NIPC's name suggests Investment Promotion Commission, so it is very easy to assume that once you delegate the mandate to that agency, then the work is done. But you need all of government. You need the federal government, you need the state government. I dare say you need local government support as well. You need the executive arm of government, you need the legislative arm of government, and you need the judiciary. You also need ordinary Nigerians. The competition for capital is real. The biggest attractors of capital are also capital exporters themselves. So they have people investing, they have people investing in their countries, they have people exporting capital. So they know what capital likes, they know how capital feels, they know the things that they did to win in their countries. And when they go out, they're looking for those same sort of ingredients. So we need everybody making capital feel comfortable. The expression that I like to use is that capital is a coward. Capital goes where it is courted. Capital goes where it is not threatened. Capital goes where it is encouraged and where it is made completely comfortable. Investors, on the other hand, are very brave. That's why investors will go to places where their capital can be placed at risk, and they understand the import of risk. What investors are looking for, though, is a decent risk-adjusted return. It's not just a return, it's a decent risk-adjusted return. If you consider the risk that you're taking, that the return is worth it. And Nigeria abundantly has that. But we need all of government working together. The NIPC Act expects NIPC to play a coordinating role on matters relating to investments in Nigeria. NIPC doesn't fully play that yet because there are parts of it that are internal, there are parts of it that are external. But working together with all of government across the board, I believe is Nigeria's best chance, of attracting the right quality, the right quantum, and the right type of investment. But a lot of the building blocks that are required for NIPC to be able to play this very important role are already in place. The work of building on that foundation simply needs to continue. Many of them are important to public service. The most important, the one I am incredibly proud of, is the fact that I've demonstrated that it is possible to work with those you find in an agency, and still you can say whether their achievements are modest or whether they're appropriate or not, but a lot of all the work was done with the people that I met in NIPC. I simply challenged them. If I look, though, at particular areas, so we thought it was important. I believe very strongly in proactive investment promotion. So the foundations for that. One was a country-focused investment promotion strategy, which enabled us to identify 20 countries of strategic importance to Nigeria for investment promotion. Our resources will always be limited. We want investments from all countries, but we cannot chase all countries, at the same time. So focusing on a handful of countries that have the greatest capacity for Nigeria to attract world-class investments in the sectors that are of critical importance to Nigeria will be useful for helping Nigeria win. Part of that targeted, deliberate investment promotion was also preparing the Book of States, which then allows us across the 36 states and the FCT to identify the competitive advantages and the investment opportunities in particular that the governors are trying to promote. Remember, NIPC as a federal agency is representing essentially, in terms of investment promotion, the governors of the 36 states and what they're trying to push. Then preparing a number of sector profiles, early stages in terms of the work done, but plenty of potential. Deliberately profiling investment opportunities on a disciplined basis across the 36 states is also an important element of this push at proactive investment promotion. Now, another critical part of that deliberate push to proactively attract investments was to define the kind of investments that we actually want to attract, which led to the reform around our international investment agreements. And we coined the phrase RIBS to make it easier to remember what we're trying to push. Investments that are responsible, that are inclusive, that are balanced, and that are sustainable. We're interested in the type and the character of the investment. We're interested in investments that recognize that we have a future, even though we want investments to be made today. So they protect that future. Investments that recognize that even though the value from a monetary perspective of the investment is important, the kind of jobs that those investments create, where they're created across Nigeria, are also important. And then sustainable to the extent that they move Nigeria towards our sustainable development goals. The work that we've done in that area has gained such recognition that Nigeria is now regarded as a thought leader in the area of international investment agreements and their reform. And NIPC is accorded material respect, and treated as subject matter experts when such things are discussed. Very strongly that you cannot work without people. You can push people to do the work, but you should do your best to help the people as well. And I remember my first engagement with staff. I said I was going to do my best to improve, their welfare. I was going to address my mind to it. And I believe, that was done. So a number of things were introduced to better support staff, and I'll say them not in any particular order. But I mentioned that at the time when I joined NIPC, the highlight of welfare was a 200 million naira staff housing scheme that was not funded. We introduced in October 2018 a 1.2 billion naira staff housing loan scheme, of which 1.1 billion has been disbursed, the object of which was to help staff acquire their own homes. A 500 million naira post-service benefit scheme was created, even though there's a pension scheme that exists already. Given remuneration levels in NIPC, I thought it would be useful if staff who are retiring or who have spent a long time with NIPC before disengaging, I thought it would be useful if they could get a check to help provide some succor for the reality of life that they will face after that period. And we introduced a productivity allowance, which was originally set at 50% of the quarterly earnings of staff, so long as the budget for that quarter was met. That since got, as the other allowances, the approval of Salaries and Wages Commission. But we also introduced a group life insurance scheme as provided in the Pension Reform Act of 2004, updated in 2014. That then means that if we lose a member of staff in the course of service, their families will get 3 times their emoluments. All of these are new welfare schemes that NIPC, did not have before. But even more importantly, in the context of reform, there were some institutional governance approvals that NIPC should have got at the beginning or early in its life, but that were not in place, that we have now secured approval for. We got approval for NIPC's organogram. We got approval for NIPC's schemes of service. The implementation of these things, sorry, I guess you can cut a bit of it. We got approval for NIPC's organogram. We got approval for NIPC's schemes of service. The implementation of these 2 things, which NIPC should have received since the beginning of its establishment, means that the progression of staff through the organization, there's greater clarity, and it can happen in a disciplined and more professional manner. NIPC has had allowances from the beginning, but based on the policies of government, there's some institutional approvals that should have been secured for those allowances. Those institutional approvals from salaries and wages were secured in November, December 2020. So from an institutional perspective, the structure, the fabric of the organization as a properly structured organization, are now in place. The work is not 100% done. I mean, it's not possible to do 100% of what was required in 5 years, but a material foundation has been laid for others to then build on.